So a couple months into the season, I made a video predicting how many goals I thought every championship striker would go on to score. Let's see how accurate my predictions were. Guys, welcome back to another video on the channel. As always, if you do go on to enjoy, make sure to leave a like. If we could hit 300 likes, that would be massively appreciated. But I've been looking forward to making this one. So a couple months into the season, I made a tier list ranking championship strikers by how many goals I thought they'd score this season. Who's been a striker from your club or the championship in general who you thought, I thought they'd score a lot more than they got onto this season. So as you can see on screen now, these were the categories that I put each striker into. Without any further ado, we'll go up the tiers one by one. Let's go. So let's start out with the bottom category. As you can see on screen now, these were the strikers who I was predicting would score 0 to 4 goals this season, and in the end, 2 of them have gone on to prove me wrong. So the strikers that I had in this bottom category and that I didn't fancy to be all too prolific in front of goal this season were Akinfenwa, Colin Kazan-Richards, Jon Dadi Bodvarsson, Jordan Rhodes and Jack Marriott. Like I say, in the end, 2 of them have gone on to prove me wrong. Colin Kazan-Richards scoring 8 goals this season for Derby, and Jordan Rhodes popping up with 7 for Sheffield Wednesday. Akinfenwa in the end just with the 1 championship goal to his name. I think that most people would have had him around that category. He was effective at times for Wycombe, no denying that, but the goals sort of came from other areas of their squad. Kazan-Richards did surprise me quite a bit, to be honest with you, because it took a little bit of time initially for him to get sort of integrated into that squad, but in terms of sort of like big moments, and especially when they were winning matches around that January period, Kazan-Richards was always seemingly the player that was popping up with the decisive moments for them in front of goal. I thought he was brought in to be a bit of like a target man who would provide goals for others, a bit like in that Chris Martin type, but now fair play to him, he has come up with the moments for Derby this season. Bodvarsson, I was right, just the 1 goal to his name this season. Goals throughout that Millwall squad have been a bit of an issue, but we'll come to another one of their strikers in just a second. Jordan Rhodes did get over the 4 goal mark in the end. He notched up 7 in the end, and Jack Marriott has had a really torrid time this season, hasn't he? Just the 1 goal to his name. After such a promising start to life in the Championship originally when he signed for Derby, his career really has fallen off since, hasn't it? But yeah, the opening category there, I don't think I've done all too badly in that one. This next category of strikers, I was banking on these guys scoring 5 to 9 goals this season, and as you can probably tell, I've had a couple of dodgy shouts in here. We'll go through these strikers in order though. Starting out with Martin Waghorn, who by the skin of his teeth has just managed to make it into this category. He scored 5 goals in the end, obviously scoring a brace on the final day of the season to keep Derby as a championship club. Overall, it's been a really disappointing season for Waghorn by his standards, but when it mattered most for Derby, he did come up as a pivotal player on the final day. The next 2 strikers that I had in this category didn't end up being the best of shouts. Macaulay Bonne only scored the 3 goals for QPR this season. Initially started out fairly brightly, but after some of their new recruits came in January, he wasn't their go-to guy in terms of the goals, was he? Chris Martin similarly didn't have the best year in front of goal. He only scored the 2 for Bristol City this season. Thankfully though, Djukovic was a prediction which I was spot on. He in the end went on to score 8 goals this season for Birmingham. Over half of his goals actually came when Lee Bowyer was in charge, so he obviously didn't get on with the Aitor Karanka system, but Lee Bowyer was able to get the best out of him towards the end of the season, wasn't he? The Fraser Campbell shout I also managed to get right. In the end, he went on to score 7 championship goals this season. Wycombe Scott Kashket fell just short of this category in the end. He only went on to score the 4 championship goals. Jamal Lowe, the first player in this category who went on to prove me wrong by scoring more goals than I had anticipated. In the end, going on to score 14 championship goals this season, including that absolute beauty that he scored against Cardiff earlier on in the season. He's had an interesting season really, because his years sort of worked out in purple patches. He'll have like a 5-game streak where he'll score like 6 goals, and then he won't score for like the next 8 or something like that, and then he'll just pick his form back up out of nowhere. That's seemingly, from the outside sort of looking in on Jamal Lowe, how his season's worked out so far. So yeah, Swansea fans will be hoping that the playoffs with Jamal Lowe will be a bit of a purple patch for him as well. Coventry's Tyler Walker wasn't the worst shout in the world to be putting into this category as well. He went on to score 7 goals this season for Coventry. Unfortunately for me though, neither Emil Rees or George Puskas could make it into this category. They both fell shy in the end. Obviously Puskas for Reading missed a large chunk of the season through injury, and Emil Rees has been a really interesting one, because when he first arrived in Preston, we were all like, oh my god, we've got a serious striker on our hands here, and ultimately he's only gone on to score 2 goals. I still think there's a real player here. He has a lot of natural ability when it comes to dribbling, being on the ball. He's got a decent amount of pace getting in behind. He's got a lot of good physical characteristics which go his way. I just think that halfway through the season he seemed to lose his confidence. I can think back to several sort of one-on-one key moments that he's had where he's fluffed his lines in the end. Hopefully that after he's able to have sort of like a full pre-season with this squad, gets to be properly integrated within the team, we can see the best of him next season. Scott Hogan for Birmingham went on to score 7 goals this season, so I did get this one correct, although I can't help but feel like it's been a bit of a underwhelming year for him after some of the bursts that he showed for Birmingham last season. Oh, but this next one hurts the most. I had Troy Parrott in this category, who I gave the benefit of the doubt to. Obviously, I made this video a couple months into the season, and he hadn't really featured a lot initially for Millwall due to injury. However, I still was backing Troy Parrott to come good in this Millwall squad. We spoke about this one a couple of videos ago, actually, when I was backing Millwall to make it into the playoffs at the start of the season. For whatever reason, it just wasn't a loan move which worked out at all, and then he didn't end up scoring for Millwall. Next up, we then had the 10 to 14 goal strikers, and I've definitely had a couple of howlers in here. Starting out with Kiefer Moore, who actually went on to prove me wrong. He scored 20 goals for Cardiff, despite missing quite a bit of a chunk of the season through injury as well, and I might go as far to say that Kiefer Moore is perhaps the most sort of well-rounded striker in the Championship, whereby the different sort of roles he can play. He's a target man, but he's someone who can still have that pace to get in behind. He's very mobile the way he plays. He's absolutely clinical. I mean, towards the start of the year, Kiefer Moore was completely carrying this Cardiff squad on his back, and he's by far and away one of the most effective strikers at this level. Freddie Ladapo for Rotherham just fell short of this category in the end. He went on to score the 9 goals for Rotherham. Lyle Taylor in the end was a bit of a horrible shout for this category. He only went on to score the 4 goals for Nottingham Forest this season. And Britt Assombalonga for Middlesbrough really did let me down. He only went on to score 5 goals for them. Now, Assombalonga at the best of times is a wonderfully inconsistent striker, but you still back him to be getting into double figures. It's not happened for him this time round, and yeah, I'm interested to see where he ends up next now. Thankfully, Lyndon Dykes did make it into this category thanks to a wonderful run of form towards the end of the season. There was a moment up until the new year where I was thinking, oh god, he's not the man for QPR, you know, they need some more reinforcements, because there was a part of the season where he went on a really tough run. But fair play to him, that run he had towards the end of the season really had lifted up his goal tally. Luton's James Collins just about made it into this category. He scored the 10 Championship goals in the end, not quite as prolific as he was last time around when he scored 14, but not bad nonetheless. Quite thankful to get into this category thanks to a hat-trick against Northend from earlier on in the season when he absolutely ripped us apart that day. Marcus Forss is an interesting one. He didn't hit this goal tally in the end. He just scored the 7 goals for Brentford. Especially at the start of the season, his minutes per goal was absolutely obscene because he was being used as this impact sub always coming off the bench for Brentford. This next prediction's not the best though. I had Lewis Grabban to get into double figures, and in the end he just managed the 6 goals for Nottingham Forest this season. Is this one of the quickest declines we've seen from a Championship striker? Last season hitting 20 goals, this season can't even get anywhere near double figures. And the same can be said for Chuba Akpom as well, who started life out at Middlesbrough so brightly, but things went downhill so quickly for him, and it now looks to the point where he may no longer be at Borough next season. Next up, we then had the strikers, who I was backing to score 15 to 19 goals this season. In the end, they put 5 strikers into this category. João Pedro had very high hopes for, and still do, to be honest with you, he's still only 19 years old and will go on to have a fantastic career, I'm in no doubt about that. 9 goals he scored in the end, the majority of them probably came actually in the first half of the season, didn't they? That goal he scored against Derby, absolute worldie, wasn't it? But in the second half of the season, they sort of went to a slightly different style of play and favoured some other players in those forward options. Cooley Woodrow in the end scored 12 goals for Barnsley. Obviously, they have also recruited and sort of changed their system as the year went on. You know, Daryl DK came into quite a prominent position with the goal scoring, Carlton Morris as well. Tyrese Campbell just scored the 6 goals in the end for Stoke, but I mean, absolutely no doubts whatsoever that had he not got injured when he did, he would have easily hit this target of goals. Coming round to next season, when he does get himself back up and going and he's fully fit again, I'm really looking forward to seeing how he does over a full season, because he's a special player. Nike Wells, he scored 10 goals in the end, but to be honest with you, for the vast majority of the season, he's been pretty average, hasn't he? I think it's fair to say that the striker that QPR had hasn't quite turned up at Bristol City yet. He's just not been the same player. But one player who did manage to hit this goal target was Dom Solanke, scoring 15 goals for Bournemouth in the end. And I think in many ways, a lot of people were saying this at the start of the season, I think a year in the Championship has done him quite good actually, you know. His opportunities were a little bit limited in the Premier League, weren't they? He obviously had that goal drought and, you know, people labelling him as a flop for the amount of money that Bournemouth had spent on him and stuff like that. But I think another year's development in the Championship will serve him very well long term, and I think that the same could be said for someone like a Brewster who's coming down with Sheffield United this season. After that, it was these three strikers who I was backing to get 20 to 24 goals this season. I had Andre Ayew, Lucas João and Teemu Pukki. In the end, none of them fell into this category. 2 fell below it and 1 fell above it. We'll start out with Andre Ayew. In the end, he scored these 16 goals this season for Swansea. In the end, he did finish as their top goal scorer. Obviously, they moved him a little bit more centrally this season. And who knows, you know, they did sort of save him for these last few games of the season in preparation for the playoffs. So had they done that, maybe he could have got them extra 4 goals that I predicted him to. Lucas João, I'm a little bit disappointed in that he didn't get up to 20 goals in the end, because the way he started out, he was looking like he could set all sorts of Championship records this season. His shot conversion rate was absolutely off the charts. His movement was wonderful. And his prolific start to this season sort of summed up Reading at the time, but the way that his second half of this season went, I think there was a bit of a moment really with João, and it was that penalty miss against Preston. It was late on into the game. I think that really seemed to knock him a little bit. You know, he only scored 1 goal in his last 10 Championship matches. His Reading form sort of faltered out a little bit. The goals from João had dried up. Don't get me wrong, he's still a wonderfully gifted striker, and 19 goals is absolutely nothing to be sniffed at, but there was just a bit of a drop off in the levels, wasn't there? And then of course there's Teemu Pukki, who went on to score 26 goals this season for Norwich. Is Teemu Pukki the best ever free transfer that's been signed by a Championship club? I think he might be. In terms of matches to goals over the 2 seasons that he's had in the Championship, it's off the chart stuff, isn't it? He spearheaded what has been a wonderfully organised team this season that have played some brilliant football along the way, and deservedly so has got a lot of plaudits for this season. And then these were the 2 strikers who I was backing to score over 25 goals this season. Thankfully, each of them went on to do that. We'll talk about Armstrong first of all at Blackburn, who has had his best goal scoring season to date, and there's no doubt going to be a ton of interest from Premier League clubs in him in the summer transfer window. 28 goals as well as 5 assists to go along with it this season for Armstrong. He's been an interesting one. A lot of his goals have sort of come in bundles. I remember there was a period around the middle of the season, he had a bit of an injury at one point as well, where he wasn't quite hitting the numbers at one stage in the season that we all sort of became accustomed to. You know, I think he scored 3 hat-tricks this season, so that's where 9 of the goals have come from. But what's to like about Adam Armstrong is I think he'd be actually quite well suited to Premier League football, especially with a team who's maybe in the bottom half, who looks to play on the break a little bit. He's a very nimble player, got a low centre of gravity, who's wicked at getting in behind. You know, his link up with Harvey Elliott this season's been wonderful at times. But of course, all the plaudits this season are going to go to Ivan Toney, setting a new Championship record, 31 goals as well as 10 assists to his name this season. I think everyone knew that he was going to be the business this season for Brentford, realistically. You know, everything just fell into line for this transfer to work brilliantly. You know, Watkins had moved on. Toney last season with Peterborough had absolutely ripped it up in League One. He deserved this move up to the Championship. The way that Brentford played, he was just such a natural fit into that system. I think what's most to like about Toney this season is it's just been consistent goal scoring throughout the year. You know, with some of the other strikers that we mentioned on today's video, they've sort of scored in bursts and stuff like that. With Toney, it's just been bang, bang, bang consistently game after game. I think that the longest he's gone without a goal contribution when he scored his first goal for Brentford was just like the 4 games. Apart from that, it's been consistently every single game he's grabbing a goal or an assist. If Brentford don't go up in the playoffs this season, you feel like regardless, Ivan Toney's going to be playing in the Premier League next season. But as you can see on screen now, guys, those were my picks a couple months into this season for how many goals I saw every Championship striker scoring. Let me know down below what you think were the best and worst shouts from this video, but I enjoyed going back to this one. It's interesting to see how your sort of perception and your opinion of different players changes as the seasons progress, because I've definitely had a couple of mares in here, haven't I? But that's why we love the Championship. It's just so unpredictable at times. So that will go ahead and wrap it up for today's video, guys. If you did go on to enjoy, make sure to leave a like, do subscribe as well for some regular Championship content. But apart from that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.